Welcome in everybody, Comfy Dad Shoes here. I'd like to introduce you to my V-Strom 650. This is the 1 year review. I've had this V-Strom now, and there are of course many good things about it, a few things that I don't like about it. Let's talk about my least favorite thing right off the rip. It's got a saddleman seat on it. That's not stock, obviously, and it's one of the most terrible piece of crap seats. Everyone says they're supposed to be so great, but it's like a gigantic sponge, and it holds water, and it just soaks your ass completely. And it's horrible anytime you get near rain, when you've been parked inside and you got to get back outside and you got to sit on it. Pray you don't have to go anywhere that's not home if it rained in between you going somewhere else. It also has a cutout in the middle that's supposed to cool your crotch. That does not work very well. So if you do get a V-Strom 650, let's clear this out. Avoid a saddleman seat like the plague, especially with the felt material that it has. Go for a seat concepts. Go for a Russell Daylong. Go for the stock seat. Go for anything other than the saddleman seat. Other than that, a V-Strom, it's extremely overlooked. I overlooked them for years, and it wasn't until I got into dual sport ADV that I ever considered one, which has only been very recently in my riding career. For a long time, I liked cruisers and I liked sport bikes and everything else. But even in the motorcycle world in general, I feel like this bike, in particular the Gen 1, which I'll show you a picture of right here. This is a Gen 1 example, and as you see, it's kind of a very utilitarian look that actually, in my opinion, looks to be the most comfortable one, and that look has actually grown on me over time. Then there is also a Gen 3. This is a Gen 3 example. Let me show you that. That comes right after my Gen 2. And both of them look great, and I will say this: I've seen some Gen 1s more recently on the Facebook group, and they can be had for dirt cheap. The Gen 1 and Gen 2, and I'm talking about like just hairs over $2,000. You can get a very capable highway bike that can cross the country and has excellent wind protection, performs extremely well, and there's not much difference in the horsepower torque number. I'm pretty sure that this motor has been relatively untouched through all three generations, but you're gonna have on all three versions of this V-Strom, you're gonna sit upright, more or less upright. You're gonna have excellent wind protection and extremely smooth throttle response, and that's one of the best things about riding a V-Strom. I have it on my bike, and it feels almost like it's carbureted or something. And I noticed that early on, and it still has that. A lot of fuel injected bikes are typically very snatchy. This V-shape, there's V-twin or L-twin 650 that this is, it's so smooth. There's no snatchiness. The mapping is very clean. I love that about this bike. Now, I would say height-wise, anybody looking for a V-Strom, I think if you're 5'9" to 6'2", it's gonna fit you like a glove. And there's obviously modifications you can do between a seat concepts low. You can lower the pegs, raise the pegs. You can do certain things like that. I have risers on this, and they came with this Strom. So whoever put them on before me just had them on there, and when I sat on it, it looked good. Now I got the bike for $3,400 at a dealership, and I think that's a great price for it. Back then, this was a year ago, it was my reward to myself for finishing up chemotherapy. I wanted to put a set of Shinko 605 tires on it. They had that or a Kenijah big blocks. I thought the Kenijahs would look really cool, and I was talked out of the Shinkos because I was told that the bike this weight would wear the tires out really fast. That's not the case. I don't believe that anymore. I would highly suggest that if you do get a V-Strom, put the 705s on them because they last forever. They are on my DR and they last forever. And people with KLRs that weigh just 15 pounds south of a V-Strom, they say they last forever on that bike too. And The Kenijah big blocks, they seem to bring more centrifugal force and wear your brake pads out sooner. They make handling a lot more difficult, and as cool as it makes the bike look, and I love the aesthetic of the bike, the handling quality, it gets cut in half. The gas mileage goes down about 3 or 4 miles per gallon. Right now, I'll show you a screenshot of the odometer and the digital display. It shows my miles per gallon at 49.9. That's excellent for a gigantic meaty mud tire, by the way. And without that, it's like 53. So it gets fantastic fuel economy. Another thing that I like too is it doesn't have a big enormous iPad. A lot of new motorcycles nowadays, they come and it's just a gigantic iPad. Those TFTs, I don't know how they're gonna look. These TFTs, I don't know how they're gonna look in 10 years. And are they gonna be like iPhones that, they get dull, they get cracked, they fade out? So I love that it has still the classic, the analog tachometer, and that plain, Casio looking digital display. Love that. Now in the front dual disc brakes, I don't really have much to say about them, and the same with the rear. The bike, it's got regular stopping power. It's not excellent, but it's not bad either. Other than the Kenijah's making it worse, it's kind of not really much to remark on there. It's as vanilla of a braking system as you can get. Now, as far as the motor goes, and this is what's really great, these bikes, they're bulletproof for a reason, and it's because it's the same motor that's been in 3 generations of V-Stroms. And because of that, they're so ironed and polished. They're incredible for that reason. You could easily get 100. It's so common to get over 100,000 miles on a 650 motor. In fact, the V-Strom 650 outsells the V-Strom 1000, I believe 2-to-1, or the V-Strom 1050 now. But I can see that when I'm riding it. And when you get on a V-Strom like the 2012 that I have, you feel like you're on a big bike. And I've felt that in this year of ownership. When I go from my DR to the V-Strom, it almost gives a sense of being in a car. So if I have to go somewhere that's far away, I take the V-Strom because I'm so much more out of the elements, and it feels like I'm out of the elements the way that I was on some much larger bikes that I have. My VFR 1200X, it gives me that same level of protection, and I feel that same level of presence on the road. So if you don't want to pay the insurance on a larger bike, I would highly suggest the 650. And if you're nervous about the RPM buzz on the highway, I would recommend going to a 16 tooth up front. A lot of people recommend that, and it does give you, I think, a few hundred less RPMs, probably about 400 or 500 less RPMs on the interstate. And around town, the motor's got plenty of torque to push that, so you don't have to worry about, is it going to be enough to do it? The 6-speed trans pushes that around no problem. So get a 16 tooth and forget about it. As far as what you see on the front, that windscreen, it does get great wind protection, but that's a calci windscreen. That's something that I added on after the fact. The factory windscreen sucks. It will beat you to death. You do want to replace that, and the mounts for the windscreen, they're not great. In fact, when you do replace it, I would either go Madstat or calci. And you're gonna see in the front right there where you mount it just mounts direct into plastic. I don't like that. It's really kind of flimsy right there, and it was a pain in the butt to get mounted. I had to actually use wing nuts to mount that just to make sure they were secure. It was wing nuts with some blue thread locker, and you have to go behind that front shroud. But that was something that I was not too thrilled about. Now, as far as if you're curious about the power on the bike, it's 70 horsepower, 45 pounds of torque. The bike can get out of its own way very easy. That's if you're just riding with yourself. Now, if you've got a passenger or a pillion, I think is what they call it. If you got a passenger, you're going to have to do a little bit of planning to get around. That's always been, I think, typical of 650cc twins and bikes in general. But you just count on having to do that with somebody on it. Now, if it's just for you, it's going to be great. Also, the suspension on it and the ground clearance. The ground clearance is not so great, and your oil filter's exposed. So I'd highly recommend a bash plate, which I don't have, but I don't do the kind of riding that would require a bash plate, which is, I've had more focus on the DR anyway, so that's where I would put my bash plate money into right now. But if this is your only bike, definitely get a bash plate. And the suspension, just keep in mind you've got a little bit more than 5.5 inches of travel there. Now, if you're going a long distance, this holds luggage fantastic, and it has that rear preload adjuster, so if you're going to put some heavier stuff, you can adjust the rear preload to however you need it, and it soaks up bumps great. Now, this is a spongy suspension, and it's a lot of bikes are going to be that way from the factory. There are some spring options on ProCycle if you want it to be a little bit stiffer. I personally would not recommend that. That's somebody that weighs 235 pounds saying that. But just bust up the preload if you're going to go further, because you're going to want that plush ride after you've been on it for, if you're going a 600 mile trip or a 1,000-mile trip, those bumps with that extra spring rate, that's going to wear you down after a while. So keep it couch-like. That would be my recommendation. I've done that, and it's been very rewarding, with the exception of the fact that Saddleman seat we talked about that I hate. Now, as far as the quality of the bike, the fit and finish, it's held up really well. The paint, it's only got kinetic damage, stuff that like from being chipped from a rock hitting it. Now the paint's held up really well to the sun and the elements, but the only thing that's really damaged it is like being bumped or rubbed or scraped up against something. But for 13-year-old paint, it's still got its pearl sparkle. It's still got a lot of the clear coat, a little squirt of pledge on the bike, and it looks fantastic. The rear view mirrors, you can see they're great. I like the big ugly square mirrors. They don't vibrate. You can see them. They're crystal clear if you look on both sides right there on me. I do want to get new handguards. I do not like the counterbalancers with those handguards. They keep popping out very easily. I would replace the hand grips, and I would get new handguards immediately. I would go with the Cherubies brand, and you could go with any other brand you want. I just prefer Cherubies because they seem to make more of them, and they seem to be available across more websites. There's always a Cherubies on a website. Sometimes I don't see other brands on a website, but that's most of what I have. I'm sure that I'm going to finish this voiceover right now, and I'm going to think of a million things I could have said. But in 1 year's time, I definitely would give this bike at least an A- or a B+. I am going to probably sell it, though, because I use it too much like I use my DR650. There's a lot of overlap. The way that I ride is local urban explorer. I go across a lot of abandoned lots. I ride along train tracks. I take a log road from time to time. There's empty Katrina lots. There's windy country roads. But I find myself using the bike for the exact same reasons I would use the DR. The only thing different is the V-Strom is just better at holding a passenger than the DR for very obvious reasons. It's a larger bike, and you can tell. But outside of that, I want to take my daughter to Disney, and it's going to pay for that. But I don't have a passenger that much anyway. My wife has her own bike, and she has a little Honda Trail that she loves. So as of right now, I'd feel totally fine selling it, and I feel very comfortable knowing that I could go pick up another one, like a Gen 1, for $2,300 somewhere for dirt cheap, and I know that it'll drive me up to Alaska and back. So highly recommend it. I'm not gonna try to sugarcoat it too much. There is definitely things that it's an ugly bike. It's very ugly. It's not gonna get you any high fives or anything like that. So if you're into aesthetics, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It's probably one of the ugliest bikes. That's why I like it. But also consider that no cop on earth is ever gonna look at you and pull you over. So if you have any questions, write them in the bottom. I'm Comfy Dad Shoes. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.